This conference will now be recorded.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm at that 9:30 on this Thursday morning, and welcome to everybody who's joining us this morning for today's webinar on cybersecurity. We have an expert with us because I'm no expert on cybersecurity, and it's Mr. Alex Bingle from Riskworks, and he's going to talk us through all aspects of cybersecurity, what it is, how you can protect yourself, and so on. But first of all, as we always do with our webinars, I just want to start off with a disclaimer. Obviously, we have to read this out. So the following presentation is produced for general guidance only, and professional advice should always be sought before any transaction is undertaken. Individual circumstances can vary, and therefore no responsibility can be accepted by Harts Limited or any of their affiliates for any action taken or any decision made to refrain from action by attendees of this presentation. It's like the terms and conditions I think you read out when everyone's entering a quiz these days, but anyway. Just to remind you that this is being recorded and will appear on our YouTube channel later on today. If you've got any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, shout out. We'll do our best to answer them as we can. And if you don't want to shout out, feel free to stick them in the chat box. You'll see a chat box in the top right hand corner of your screen. Just chuck it into there and we'll answer the questions as we're going along, or if we need to, we can always answer them at the end. We had our spring statement last week. There's been a lot about it in the papers. Just thought I'd pull out one or two areas which might affect most of us, and the main one is the national insurance threshold increasing to 12,570 from July. So that's great, gives everybody a little bit more, but then he's going to take it away because we've got the national insurance rise of 1.25% from 6th of April. So he's giving one hand, taking away with the other. That has been confirmed that that's going to happen, and they always said it would do. It's still on, and it also applies to dividends. So if you're like most people taking out your salary, low salary, high dividends, that amount attaches to the dividend as well. I've put on there fuel duty cut. Really, have we seen the petrol pumps actually reducing their prices on the forecourt? There's been some argument over whether this 5p cut has actually happened. It'd be interesting to know whether you see that as actually happening or not. We have an election giveaway, 1p off income tax from 2024. The ultimate cynic in me is saying, well, how would you an election around about then? There'll probably be other things as well around then. That's something to look forward to, I think. And then we have the employment allowance increased from 4,000 to 5,000. So it's an extra £1,000 saving for employers when they're paying employers' national insurance. That's going to be from next month. So those are the main areas which are coming out of the spring statement update. And we still have time to make your arrangement to pay if you owe less than 30,000 on your self-assessment return. But you've got to do it today. You've got to there's no penalties if you make an arrangement to pay by the 1st of April, which is tomorrow. No, it's not an April Fool's. It is actually correct. So you've only got today if you owe some tax and you want to make an arrangement to pay to do it. And child benefits, we mentioned this, so we keep on mentioning it. If you've claimed child benefit when you shouldn't have done, HMRC are on the attack on this. They are looking at what's been paid out in child benefit, and they are looking at your earnings. So just as a reminder, if your earnings are above £60,000 for either couple and you have been claiming child benefit, you shouldn't have been. You will have to repay it. There is a sliding scale between £50,000 and £60,000. So we have this crazy situation where each of you can be earning £49,000 and having full child benefit, and only one of you can be earning £60,000 and you get nothing. It's just the way the legislation is set out. But HMRC are on the attack, as they are with job retention scheme payments. So if your company has claimed job retention scheme payments when they shouldn't have done, there is a task force which has been set up to actually have a look at this, and there are proposals to make company directors personally liable if the company goes under and you claim job retention you shouldn't have done. As a reminder, the Let Property campaign, one of the longest running campaigns by HMRC, is still open. So if you have received rent and you haven't declared it, I'm sure that doesn't apply to any of our clients, or you've had other income from rental properties, then you have an opportunity to come clean about it with very advantageous settlement terms. So if that's your situation, please get in touch and we'll be able to help you out with all of these things. So that's our quick update on where we are at the moment and with the spring statement and just where HMRC are going at the moment. Please follow us. We've got loads of resources online. We have a LinkedIn. Follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow us on YouTube. Just subscribe to us on YouTube. It's all for free. And follow us on Twitter at Harts Accountants. Just to let you know, we've got some more resources coming out fairly soon. We have our second ebook, which is going to be available in relation to talking about management accounts and how important these are or can be to you. That'll be available for free as a free download and as a hard copy if you want. And the next webinars, we're having a little bit of break because we've got Easter coming up, so we're going to miss one in a fortnight's time. And the 28th of April, we're going to be joined by Synergy Recruitment on staff retention, how to look after and keep your staff. On the 12th of May, property letting and whether you should own property through a limited company or own it personally, what to do if you haven't declared your rental income or what are the consequences for doing so. You think you may have made losses, but have you really? And then on 26th of May, we'll be looking to cover off research and development, what this means for you, how much extra you can actually claim as a result of research and development. And it's not men in white coats sitting in labs anymore. There's all sorts of stuff you can actually claim it for, and it's very advantageous from a tax point of view. And then on the 9th of June, how to prepare a marketing plan. I work with a lot of businesses and doing some business advisory work, and one of the things most businesses often lack is a marketing plan, which can be quite vital to your business going forward. So we're going to give you some tips and ideas on how to prepare one. So feel free to go to our events page and log in and book on. All these are free. Just book on through Eventbrite and you will be able to view all of these. Okay, that's all that I've got to say. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to make Alex the presenter. Okay, Alex, you're now the presenter. So I'd like to introduce you to Alex Bingle from Riskworks, who are looking after cybersecurity and insurance for you as well, and what to do in cases of cybersecurity. So again, I'm going to hand over to you, Alex, and you have the screen.
Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yep, good, brilliant. Good morning, everyone. Just first and foremost, just say Steve was very gracious there in describing me as a cyber security expert. I wouldn't necessarily describe myself as that. Hopefully, though, I can identify a few things that what I can bring to any company in terms of identifying cyber risks and how we can prevent cyber loss. And that's kind of what today's webinar is about. So just first and foremost, I'm Alex Bingle. I work for Riskworks Business Services. We're an independent insurance broker based in Wilmslow, if you don't know about us. We deal with all sorts of business insurance, private lines insurance as well for high net worth. But one of our expertise is cyber security, cyber insurance as well. And we have our own brand, ScienceWorks, which you can see on the screen here. So hopefully I won't bore you too much today talking about insurance. There is a little bit about that at the end. We all know insurance is one of the things that can send most people to sleep. Just first and foremost, this is what we're going to be talking about: cybersecurity and loss prevention. There's 4 areas that this webinar will be split into, 4 segments. I'm just going to start off by telling you about a recent study at the University of Maryland, which reported that hacker attacks occur on computers with internet access every 39 seconds. The fact that if you haven't been hacked is a good thing. It means your cybersecurity tends to be working. I mean, that staggers me that every 39 seconds somebody with internet access is potentially being hacked. So during this presentation, this computer, for example, will hopefully stop 69 attempts to hack it. It is quite mind-boggling when you think of those kind of figures. The mainstream literature that you see and incidents that you hear about in regards to cyber attacks are usually kind of reserved for the 6 o'clock news, where we hear about the big firms being hacked, where or governments suffering data breach at the hands of terrorist organisations. We're maybe all aware of what happened to TalkTalk, to Tesco, Facebook, British Airways, just to name a few, who've suffered or been on the end of a cyber attack. But today's webinar is one chiefly designed to dispel the myth of it won't happen to me, because more than likely it will happen to you. So what if I tell you that a medium-sized business was just as likely to suffer an attack as a large business? Every small business suffers an attack at least once a year, and micro firms over, 1 in 3 will suffer an attack each year. Medium firms, every other firm will suffer an attack of some form every 12 months. So, as I said, we're going to split this into 4 segments. First and foremost, the threat. We're going to identify what the threats are, what the evolving threats are to you as a business from your network. Secondly, loss. We're going to identify how a loss can affect you as a business. Prevention, how we could potentially prevent any of this happening. And finally, protection, how we protect ourselves as well in the event that the worst does happen. So the first area we'll look at is threat. What is the threat? Where is it coming from? And how is it evolving? So obviously, the pandemic has not been easy for a lot of businesses. They've had to adapt how they've worked. We've got people working remotely. So first and foremost, your network's everywhere now. It's not just located in an office. So it's about making sure your staff are protected remotely as well. And also, there are studies that say your staff are less inclined to click on a suspicious or innocuous link when they are sat in the workplace than when they are at home. When you're at home, your guard is down. You might not think about it. And you receive an email, click on this, and there are some people out there who will click on those links. You're also less likely to know about the whereabouts of your the movements of your colleagues as well. And we'll go into that in a little bit shortly about how that can lead to you potentially being manipulated by criminals. In fact, I'll go to that now, actually. So yes, we had a client who, this is just after the pandemic, the first lockdown had ended, and the managing director had gone on holiday abroad. They all knew he was abroad, and one of the members of staff who was working remotely, who worked in the finance department, received an email, which for every intents and purposes looked like it had come from the managing director. It spoke about how he was enjoying being on the beach on holiday, and he said, "I've just received an email requesting the payment from the supplier X for X amount of money. Do you mind just transferring this money? The bank details are as follows." For every intents and purposes, that email looked and sounded like it had come from the managing director, and this member of staff, without thinking, transferred the money. It was only a few weeks later, when the supplier was still chasing for the payment, that they realised they'd been targeted by a hacker of some sort. But that hacker will have been sat in their system for months, identifying who was the best target to attack, and how, monitoring emails about how the managing director spoke and things like that. And also, he knew that he was on holiday. So things like dealing with COVID-19, it has had a huge impact on how a business operates and how a business works, and how you can be targeted by the criminals as well. 61% of businesses have security. Only 61% of businesses have security controls on company devices. 40% have staff using personal devices, which isn't good. Only 33% have a VPN for remote working, and that's where this COVID-19 and pandemic issue has come to the fore. And 30% of businesses only 30% have a continuity plan that covers cybersecurity. So that example of the email that's been received from the managing director, that is an example of social engineering, and social engineering has boomed in the cyber realm in the last 24 months since the first lockdown occurred. So social engineering is a method where attackers use it to deceive the victim into performing an action, exactly what we described in that scenario where they've received an email from the managing director. So how is it evolving, the threat? Where is it all coming from? Obviously, Russia are the forefront in everyone's minds at the minute with what's going on in Ukraine. Russia have used cyber attacks as a means to disrupt other Western nations for a long time now. We don't have any figures yet, but we believe since the war in Ukraine, these are increasing. It's very targeted, and we know North Korea as well. They've been known to make targeted attacks through cyber networks as part of their disruptive programs. What could the actual threat look like? How could it, when you see it, what would it look like to anyone who has been hacked? First and foremost, the increase of ransomware. So this is where somebody puts software into your computer that denies access to something. It may be your website. So let's say you're a company that's heavily reliant on your website. The ransomware shuts the website down and demands some sort of ransom payment. It's been a growing problem throughout 2021. Statistics have suggested that the incidence of ransomware doubled during the year, representing it's around about 8% of all cyber attacks. It will come as no surprise that we expect ransomware to maintain this foothold and a growing increase in terms of how you are attacked. Secondly, cryptocurrency, blockchain, NFTs. I mean, it's all, don't ask me to explain any of them. I'm not an expert in these fields, but it is described as the future of finance. But where there's finance, there will be criminals lurking. We expect to see an uplift in the amount of crypto-based scams and cyber attacks. And spear phishing, that's exactly what happened to that company I described. Targeted phishing, basically. We've all heard of phishing from the terminology of computers and receiving emails. Spear phishing is where it's very targeted. They've targeted a certain member of staff or a certain person because they've seen a vulnerability there. And we're seeing more and more spear phishing as opposed to just general phishing. So put simply, this means attackers target a very specific user in an attempt to steal credentials, access to data, or other compromises to their security or identity. And unlike conventional phishing, which is a broad brush approach, spear phishing is a lot more personal. 1 in every 3,722 emails in the UK is a phishing or spear phishing attempt. Now, you can imagine the amount of emails that are sent daily in the UK. That's a very large amount, 1 in 3,700. Okay. So here we are. There's a few. This gives an idea of the types of attacks that we do receive. See at the bottom there, 43% of attempted breaches and successful breaches, in fact, are fraudulent emails. 20% are viruses or spyware or malware of some sort. 12% of successful breaches are impersonating an organization in emails or online. 8%, as I mentioned before, ransomware. That's only going to increase. 5% is an actual full-on hack or attempted hack. 4% is denial of service attacks. Just going back to the hacking or attempted hack, being hacked can have a massive damage to your business. An attempted hack can likewise leave a big mark that could, damage your business. 4% denial of services, 3% unauthorized use of computers, 3% other breaches. Okay. So half the problem is the battle from within. How do we as a business go about assessing our risk? We'll come to that a little bit later on in terms of the prevention segment, how we can actually prevent it from happening. But if I just put these figures up here, okay, 83% of business have up-to-date malware protection, 49% have rules about moving and storing personal data, 33% have done cyber risk assessments, 31% of businesses have in-house cybersecurity policies, and only 15% have done a cybersecurity vulnerability audit. And hand on heart, how many people with a business could say they fall into every single one of those percentages? It's probably unlikely. You're probably going to maybe have a couple of gaps there, one or two places. What is actually scary as well is these figures are all down on the figures from 2020. Companies have become a bit more lax in their approach to their cybersecurity. So, what can we do? What can we do to make sure we're more aware as a business? How can we approach this battle from within? What we can do is start by completing your own risk assessments of your business. These next 10 points are 10 things which I think are quite crucial for any business to bear in mind. So ask yourself the following questions, okay? Oh, I'll go back a page, there we go. So, can you see this? I don't think you can see these. Can't see these first 5. I'll just read these out. There we go. So ask yourself the following questions. How reliant are you upon your IT infrastructure? Number 2, should you not have access to your IT is disrupted, what impact would this have on your business? Should your IT be out of action for a period of 72 hours, what financial loss would you suffer as a business? How often is your data backed up? Is the handling of data and use of IT systems regulated by policies and procedures? You may be able to, answer some of these questions, but some of them you might not, and it's quite crucial that you do identify it. Number 6, how often do your staff change passwords? Would you expect your staff to recognise and respond accordingly to suspicious emails or links? Do you have procedures in place to respond in the event of a cyber breach? How many individual records do you hold? What is the nature of the records you hold? It's 10 very easy questions for you to answer yourself within the business. But by doing so, you can start basically a very good risk assessment of how your company approaches cybersecurity. So yeah, the reliance on your IT infrastructure is absolutely crucial, and that's going to lead us nicely into the second segment, which is all around loss. So the scale and impact in cost of a cyber attack on your business. I'm not trying to scaremonger here, but some of these figures you might see are quite mind-boggling, but it's a good way of bringing awareness around of how a cyber attack really could punish you financially. So there's obviously this whole saying of it won't happen to me. As Robert Mueller, who was FBI director in 2012, said, there are only 2 types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be. Chances are, with a lot of businesses, you've already been hacked. You just don't know it. There may be something already in your system which could potentially leave you vulnerable in the future. So here's some staggering statistics about UK businesses that experienced a cyber attack in the last 12 months. 38% of micro firms did, 52% of small businesses, 66% of medium businesses, and 68% of large businesses all suffered a cyber attack in the last 12 months. So that, kind of saying if it won't happen to me, it does, it's real, it will happen. And I think that the saddest statistic of all is this, the fact that 60% of SMEs that do suffer a serious cyber attack tend to go out of business within 6 months if they've not got themselves properly protected in terms of security in place and insurance. And another thing, companies based in the northwest are more likely to become victims of cyber attack as well, which does worry me. So these stats should be a little bit sobering. The average cost of the worst security breaches in the UK, where businesses have been literally brought to a standstill as a result of a cyber attack, it tends to cost between 65,000 and 115,000 to get your business back to where it was pre-attack. The predicted annual cost of cybercrime for last year was £6 trillion. So that's a lot of money, which we can't afford to lose. So what's the worst that can happen to your business? What kind of loss could you suffer? I mean, we could talk about data loss. That's probably the thing which it maybe isn't spoken about enough, but you do hear about it on the news more in terms of cyber attacks. Customer information, personal information, employee information. You've got to think about your customers here, putting your customers first. How would they react if you had to ring them and tell them that you've been hacked and all of their data has been stolen by a third party and put on the dark web or something like that? You're going to suffer serious reputational damage. And that's just on data loss. The actual financial loss of itself is where it's going to hit the coffers the most. Your business could be interrupted due to a denial of service, or it could be interrupted because you've been hacked. You've had to shut down all your computers for 24 hours, 48 hours, whilst the experts come in and deep dive into your systems to remove the problems. It really can impact on your business. The cost of cleaning up the systems, both your software and your hardware, is very costly. And also, you could be hit by the ICO, fines and penalties imposed for losing data. Definitely going to suffer reputational damage, not just your customers being upset that you've lost their data, but you could, from a business interruption point of view, you could lose a lot of those customers. They'll take their business elsewhere, and you've got to think about how that will impact your business. So here's just a few examples of, just to put it into context of how it could impact your business. We go back to that email, victim of a spoofing or social engineering attack, being asked to pay an invoice. They're not going to be asking for £300 or £400. It tends to be in the thousands of pounds when they get away with it, without verifying the request with the supplier. We've got an example there of where a firm has paid £5,000 into the bank account details that were provided. That's just the tip of it. £10,000, you could be done for £10,000. A manufacturer, these are all real life examples. A manufacturer sustained a phishing attack which resulted in ransomware being released onto their system. It demanded £10,000 for restoration. A lot of IT forensic companies would probably tell you to pay, which is a sad state of affairs. They may be able to sort it out for less than that, but for £10,000, a lot of them would say pay. £20,000, we're going up here. It's getting scarier in terms of the figures. This example was a member of staff at an educational institution in London did not follow the standard data handling procedure, which led to confidential information being leaked. It was brought to light by a third party who spotted the data. The reputational injury was unquantifiable. Investigation costs reported to be over £20,000 in the end. These are all examples that have been provided to us by insurance companies. One paid nearly £50,000 when a London-based solicitor sustained theft of multiple company laptops that contained confidential information. These laptops were not encrypted, and the resulting loss from disgruntled clients ran up to nearly £50,000, and last we knew that was still ongoing in terms of the costs. £70,000 when a hotel chain sustained a denial of service attack. If you're a hotel chain, you're very reliant on your internet, your website and the internet, people booking online. If people can't book your website, book it on your website, your hotel, you're going to lose out massively. a loss of bookings and IT forensics to sort that out cost in excess of £70,000. Now we're talking big money. Could you afford this kind of loss? £250,000. And this is a mid-sized marketing firm. Were informed by the National Crime Agency of a loss to their customer data after receiving a number of complaints from their customers. The customers had identified it, that their data was being used before the company had even realised the incident caused embarrassment. Nearly £250,000 paid out responding to that event. IT forensics, PR costs, loss of business. So could you afford that kind of financial loss, £250,000 to your business overnight? Could you pay fines and penalties imposed by the ICO for loss of data? And is your business prepared to be suddenly, without warning, interrupted? It's massive. It could really affect you if you do get attacked. So let's dispel this myth of it won't happen to me. I don't know if there's any actual IT experts on today, but I think a lot of them will agree with me that they would never say a lot of these things. So here's a few kind of myths which people use as a barrier to not looking at these problems in a more in-depth manner, and as I get onto it, insuring themselves against these risks. We have all the latest anti-spyware installed. Our IT manager says our firewall is impenetrable. I don't think any IT company would ever say that with 100% certainty. They know more than anyone else, but it can happen. And their PI insurers as well wouldn't be very happy with them saying with 100% certainty it can't happen, because if it did, we all know who the company who gets attacked would blame. This will never happen to us. Everything is password protected. Doesn't really mean much in this day and age. We'll come on to some cyber hygiene around passwords, but the amount of people whose password is still password one is staggering. Our IT providers are experts, so we don't need to worry about these things. You do need to worry about these things. You need to have a self-awareness in-house of the cyber threat to your company. You can't just rely on your IT providers to be the ones ensuring it doesn't happen. They will do their best. We know some very, very good companies out there who we work with who provide the best cybersecurity, the best advice, and they will still say, look, it's not completely foolproof. The hackers always tend to be one step ahead. And I would never fall for a trick like that. That's another one. Most people won't. It will never happen to them. It won't happen to me, but it does. It will. It might happen to you. All of these things, it won't. The best cybersecurity won't stop these hackers forever. Firewalls have been broken down. Passwords have been uncovered, and your cybersecurity experts, they'll be the first ones to tell you that a cyber attack could still happen, no matter what security or alert system you have in place. And as we mentioned before, some firms won't even know they've been attacked. In some scenarios, they don't even, I've worked with staff who haven't even been suspicious about certain emails. So, section 3, moving through this nicely, prevention. So this is where normally I would employ an IT cyber security expert to maybe provide a bit more tech advice. Unfortunately, you're not going to get much tech advice from me, but there's a few things here in how you as a company can prevent in-house some of these things from occurring. So how secure are you? We've talked about that risk assessment before. You may think that you've got it all covered, but you've got to remember that hackers tend to be one step ahead. Let's take the scenario of a burglar walking down the street. Okay, he's scoping an area. He's deciding which house he's going to rob. There's a house that's got large security gates, bars on the windows, clearly lots of alarm systems, security cameras, and guard dogs patrolling the ground. So he may be more inclined to go to the next door house, which has no cameras. It's got, no alarm systems, no cameras, no bars on the windows, and the doors are left unlocked or wide open. This is quite like a cyber attack. You're more likely to be attacked if you don't have all of the fancy security in place. They will look for a vulnerability and exploit it, these hackers. But at the same time, they may also be interested in what is valuable. And when they see all the best cybersecurity in place, they may think, well, what are they protecting? So this is why having all of this security in place doesn't necessarily mean you aren't vulnerable to an attack. So the burglar, he may say, all right, the dogs, alarms, cameras, they're protecting something more valuable. So he'll scope that house out for more, he'll bide his time. He'll wait for a number of weeks learning the routines, working out the alarm codes. As you can tell, these are all metaphors for your systems here. What's to say they can't get through the gates whilst no one is looking and disarm the cameras and the alarms or feed the dogs steak or something like that? The average time an attacker stays hidden on somebody's network is 5 months. So that just goes to show you may not even know you've been attacked. You may not know that there's something suspicious there. Your IT company, they may pick something up. It's their job to do that. If they don't, it's because these guys are very clever. So what is to say, they haven't already exploited a weakness by pretending to be somebody they're not to get inside your systems? And what if, for all your vigilance and security, someone else who lives in the same house, you've got all these alarms and things. What if somebody else who lives there forgets to set the alarms or shut the doors when they went out? And as we will identify, human error is one of the biggest causes of a breach occurring. If a hacker wants to find a way in, they will. So how can you get your house in order? How can you manage your risk and your exposure to cyber attacks? So getting your house in order. Here's a few things. What good practices do you and your staff apply? Regular password updates. There's an argument in the industry as to whether this is a good, regular updates are a good idea. Let's take the example of the person whose password is password 1. What are they going to change it to if they're asked to change their password every month? Password 2, password 3. That's how the human brain works in trying to remember passwords. We have so many we have to remember these days. However, it's important that you do get your staff applying, kind of really unique passwords, numeric, uppercase, lowercase, symbols, avoiding, repeated passwords, as I say. What accesses do you allow your staff on the network, the internet banking? Go back to the pandemic. Staff are less likely to click on links, go on certain websites, clickbait, things like that when they are sat in the office. But what accesses do you allow your staff, particularly when it comes to banking? It's very important that you have procedures around that. And what procedures do you have in place for handling, and not just for handling of, but the access to personal sensitive data? But there are a lot of examples where a rogue member of staff has been the one who's stolen the data, sold the data. If somebody's leaving the company, they may have to work their notice, but what's to say they're not stealing data? Obviously, we need to be able to trust people, but it's always wise to have these kind of procedures in place. And then verifying of making payments. It's very important that you verify any change of bank details on a multiple authentication. That's easy to say. Multiple authentication. If you get an email from a supplier saying we've changed our bank details, I'd ring them. Don't ring the number on the email. Ring the number that you already have on your system. Ring the trusted person there to verify that the bank details have changed. You've had it on email, have it verbally over the phone as well. These are all little things that you can think about. And then speak to your IT services, the support services. I mean, that they are, as I said at the start, I'm not a cyber security expert in terms of what you can put in place. I know certain things that you need to be doing. They're the experts. They're the ones who can advise you on all of these things. Advanced detection and response systems, regular computer updates, network penetration testing, which is a security assessment performed by basically an ethical hacker, somebody who basically hacks into your system And what they do is they identify the cybersecurity vulnerabilities that could be used to compromise on-premises and cloud environments. If anyone wants to be put in touch with anyone who can perform network penetration testing, I've got a panel of people who are all, absolute experts in that kind of thing. Vulnerability testing is another one on there. Or is it sometimes called vulnerability assessment? I think it's a process of evaluating security risks in your software systems and reduce the probability of threat. Vulnerability scans, they look for known vulnerabilities in your system and they report potential exposures. It's a little bit different to the penetration testing, which are basically there to exploit actually carried out to exploit the weaknesses in your, in the architecture of your IT network and determine the degree to which an attacker can gain access. I've missed dark web research out there. It's quite, you can get, these experts can access the dark web and tell you what's on the dark web about your company. We had that done a few years ago. There were a load of defunct emails from Riskworks which were out there on the dark web. Obviously, luckily, they're not used anymore, but it's quite eye-opening what can be found out there. Portable device encryption and security, that's important. Again, I'm not going to go into details because I'm not a massive expert in how that's done or kind of what extra protection that provides, but speak to your IT support services. We have all of our portable devices encrypted. Firewall updates, regular ones. If we'll tie this up at the end with insurance. A lot of insurers would expect your firewalls to be updated on a monthly basis at the very least. Login update prompts, kind of having a regularity of that in terms of changing your passwords. I've spoken about the kind of whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Is it good to just have a very unique password or regularly changing them? There's an argument for both. Web gateway security, it's kind of a cyber barrier or checkpoint that keeps unauthorized traffic from entering your network. And then obviously regularity of backup. So just moving on then to the final segment, which is the actual protection. This is where I am going to talk a little bit about insurances. I'm a big fan of Lord of the Rings and the books and the film series, and I think this is quite a good analogy. Well, I think it's a good analogy of what happens if they do get in. You can get all the security in place. If a hacker gets in, it could have explosive consequences on your business. So what happens if somebody does actually breach your defense? In Lord of the Rings, King Theoden said that the walls of the Hornburg have never been breached. The Orc army managed to do that. For those who haven't watched it, no spoilers. So what can we do? What can we do to make sure that in the event that somebody does get in and causes you a financial loss, what can we put in place? So that's where cyber insurance comes in. Cyber insurance is an odd one in that it's only something that's really started to be developed by insurers in the last 5 years. There's always been a product for the last 15, 20 years or so, but it's not really been fit for purpose, or none of the insurance companies have really quite grasped what is required. So they're getting there now. We're getting some good insurance policies. So only 43% of businesses have some form of cyber insurance. That's even less for charities. Only 29% of charities have some form of cyber insurance. There is a lot of cyber insurances that are kind of pinned onto other packages. So, for example, Harts, you'll have a PI, you'll have a liabilities policy. You probably have a cyber insurance policy that's either pinned into that professional indemnity or pinned into the liabilities in some way. We're making it our job to emphasize how important it is to really look at your cyber insurances. Standalone cyber policies give you a lot more cover than these kind of package policies where it's added as a part of the package. So statistics really are quite startling in terms of companies who've got a specific cyber policy that's covering them against all the risks. Micro firms only 4%, small firms only 13%, medium firms only 17%, large firms only 21%. It's quite staggering, really, that only 1 in 5 large firm has a cyber specific policy. And again, charities there 4%. So what does a cyber insurance policy cover you against? Again, don't want to send you to sleep right at the end, but first and foremost, first party losses, what it covers you as a business. So, it will cover you for cybercrime, which covers you against theft from your bank accounts, where those spear phishing attacks have been made, where you've had somebody actually, kind of commit fraud on your bank account. Your cyber insurance policy will pick that up. So that's theft from the bank, invoice fraud, things like that. Business interruption is so important that you're covering this on a cyber policy. Your standard business interruption policy that's normally built into your liabilities or your material damage policies will not cover cyber attacks. It'll be an exclusion on the policy. A cyber insurance policy covers the business interruption caused following a cyber event of some sort. That's where you will have the biggest financial losses within your business interruption side. Ransomware, extortion payments. Ransomware cover is generally covered by the best cyber insurance policies. You're not allowed to talk about it. It's a bit like Fight Club. You can't talk about having ransomware. If you tell your customers that you've got ransomware covered, it actually makes your policy null and void. So you've got to be very stum on the fact that you have ransomware cover. You can understand the reasons why you wouldn't be allowed to tell anyone you've got ransomware. Ransomware extortion payments covered. It covers the actual IT forensic investigation. So the actual physical costs of somebody having to come on site, go through your network, cleanse your network, remove the threats. It is costly. So the IT support, system rectification, your hardware, your software, any damage to that, your cyber insurance will cover. It covers you, importantly, as well for your third-party breaches. So where you've caused damage to a third party, you've sent something to them, which has in turn led to them being hacked, and it all comes back to you. It could leave you exposed to the costs that are put upon you by the external parties. Cyber insurance covers that. So incident response and notification covers your legal fees of having to fight anything there. Your regulatory fines. It won't cover necessarily fines where you're legal. You have to pay them. It may cover other regulatory fines that are applied upon you, and also the legal fees that you spend fighting any fines. Transmission of malware to a third-party system. We spoke about the IT forensics on the last slide. Exactly the same. It will cover you for that, for any third-party loss. Privacy liability and associated compensation awards, all covered within a third party, the third party side of the policy. So anything really that increases the cost of your work, any loss of sales during the incidents, consequential reputational harm, privacy breach management costs, things like that, crisis communication, PR costs. If you have to employ somebody to, mitigate the loss within the media, or amongst your client base. These are all covered on a cyber policy. So, there are indirect impacts of a cyber breach, which is, we've touched on it already. How would a breach affect your customer-supplier relationship? Would your inability to work, meet your clients' demands, have an impact on doing business going forwards? These are all things you need to think about. Would your customer lose confidence? And if you are the subject of a hack or breach, it becomes public knowledge. How would this affect new business? If you're the firm that got hacked, are you going to be able to draw in new business if you've got this bad reputation? And do you actually have the physical time to deal with a cyber breach? You've got to worry about how it can impact your business on the bigger scale. If you can't trade, your customers probably going to go elsewhere and not trust you with their data. It's really something you have to think about. But in a cyber insurance policy will there pick up the pieces for you and hopefully also mitigate the loss, the instant impact of realizing you've been attacked and having a cyber insurance policy react, where a loss adjuster is immediately appointed. They have special cyber forensic teams who can come immediately out to your premises. These are all good things that you can have. So just in conclusion, how secure are you as a business? If we go back, to the analogy of that burglar walking down the street, let's think about it as you as a business owner. I could probably predict every business that's present today. You insure all the physical things that you have. You insure your stock, your fleet of cars, or your car even. You insure your actual computers. You insure your furniture. You insure, your liabilities. You insure your staff. But do you insure all of the valuable things that aren't necessarily tangible? Are you insuring against data loss or your computer network? You can't actually see it, but it's valuable. The world has changed, and you need to keep up. You've secured, you've insured your house against the burglar robbing it. Let's insure ourselves against an attacker as well. Okay, I think that pretty much brings it to an end. Just an idea of some of the insurers that we work with. They're all reputable firms. They've all got ever improving policies as well. If you need to talk to me about insurance, my details are hopefully on the next slide. Does anyone have any questions?
I think the only question we've had so far is, so as a start, which virus checker should we use? AVG and Norton both suggest total or premium protection is given by their software, but then they come back for more money, for more protection. Is Windows Defender good enough on its own?
It's a good, again, I can't claim to be an expert in that side of things. They claim these things. They say it's giving you 100% protection. The fact that they're asking for more money is probably because they're having to improve their protection on a monthly basis, because it's a constant fight between the hackers and the ethical hackers to keep up. As I say, I can't really give you advice in terms of whether the Windows protection is sufficient. But if you do need to talk to somebody about it, we've got a lot of experts who can give you that kind of advice. Sorry, yeah. I can't really answer that question.
No, that's fine. I mean, as I say, you can access the portal to people here, because many of us won't know who to contact with a lot of these sorts of things. But as I say, you've got your expert panel there. I think that's it. So thank you very much indeed, Alex. That was frightening and reassuring as well. So, and I think that might apply to a lot of us here. So we've just got to make sure we get our houses in order. If anybody wants to contact Alex, his details are on the screen there. And as I say, this recording will appear on our YouTube channel later on today. So if you missed anything, you want to go back on anything, just have a watch of that, and you'll be able to pick up Alex's details as well. Finally, thank you, Alex, very much indeed, and Riskworks for giving this webinar. That's great. And we hope to see you on future webinars. Thanks very much, and have a great day.